Hello, welcome to 2025. This is Todd Wall from Aquatongue Media, and I saw an article that I wanted to discuss. The title is Dungeons and Dragons Gets Woke Makeover that acts as key term and introduces trigger warning. Um, I do sometimes get a little bit uncomfortable with using the term woke. I think woke can be thrown around a little bit lazily. Typically from the right towards the left. At times I'm reluctant or reticent when I see the word woke in a headline to discuss that article. But I thought this was an interesting article. Dungeons and Dragons is actually a game that I used to play in my younger days. Played it quite extensively. Enjoyed the game. I would definitely be part of the early editions of Dungeons and Dragons. This would definitely be applicable to me. The game that they're trying to change is the game that I'm familiar with. So I guess you would say it affects me personally, although I haven't really played the game in years. I wish I could play the game. I just didn't. The circumstances didn't allow me to play it as I got older. I know there's people who play the game into their well into their adult years and have these ongoing games. I just wasn't fortunate enough to find myself in that situation. But let's discuss the article. It begins by saying critics have slammed the newest installment of the Dungeons and Dragons rulebook for going woke. In the game's 2024 Player's Handbook, races are now species, and some character traits have been separated from biological identity, according to the New York Times. A mountain dwarf is no longer inherently brawny and durable. A high elf no longer intelligent and dexterous by definition, the newspaper explained. I don't know how I feel about that. Certainly, I'm okay with them changing the term race to species. You could say that race, they never should have really referred to an elf and a human as different races. And I'm fine with that, but sort of basically saying that you can't say that they're inherent characteristics of the different species, that orcs aren't inherently different than elves, aren't inherently different than dwarves, aren't inherently different than humans. I think that's a bit much. That's going a little too far. The article continues, Wizards of the Coast, the Dungeons & Dragons publisher owned by Hasbro, implemented a trend that allows players to stop the game when they feel uncomfortable. Players are encouraged to use a gesture such as crossing their arms in an X or raising their palm to pause the game, according to a section of the handbook shared on social media. That seems a bit much to me. The signal shouldn't trigger a debate or a discussion. Thank the player for being honest about their needs, set the scene right, and move on, the book said. So if a dungeon master, and I do have to say, when I played the game, I was always forced to kind of be the dungeon master, unfortunately. I was relatively young when I played, and I just found that the people I was playing with didn't have the kind of discipline or ability to kind of manage a game and run a game. I was unfortunately the only one who had the ability to do that. And so I always found myself playing the role of the dungeon master, which you're sort of creating the game for other players. You're not really playing it yourself. And so in this instance, if a dungeon master is creating an adventure or a scenario or situation which one of the players finds themselves uncomfortable with, they can raise their arms in an X or put their hand up to indicate that they would like either the scene paused or I guess just kind of stopped completely, and maybe the dungeon master can go about changing the scene in a way that makes it more comfortable for that particular player. That's interesting to me. The foreword of the book shared online said the original game excluded and disrespected women as well as and portrayed slavery not as a human tragedy but as a commercial transaction. The original game was probably insensitive to some of these things, but I guess in some aspects the original game was just trying to sort of reflect history. Most of human history, there was a lot of insensitivity. I think the game sort of captured that a little bit. I think to basically, that's kind of a little bit nasty towards the people. There's a group of people who were involved in inventing and creating the game. And through time, they basically sold the game. A big company got the rights to it. Then you get people who are running the company who wouldn't necessarily be creative types. And it's interesting. They inherit this intellectual property, and then they go about saying, it wasn't respectful or didn't reflect the fact that slavery was human tragedy, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. It seems a little bit much to me. Robert Kuntz, a game designer who frequently collaborated with co-creator of Dungeons & Dragons, Gary Gygax. So Gary Gygax is the name that's associated with Dungeons & Dragons. That is there were other people involved, but that was kind of the main guy who had created Dungeons & Dragons. But Robert Kuntz told the Times he disliked the changes. It's an unnecessary thing, he said. It attempts to play into something that I'm not sure is even worthy of addressing, as if race is bad. Dungeons & Dragons enthusiasts and social media users have slammed the company for changing the rules, claiming it is an insult to the creators. Wokeism personified. The player signals that they want adjusted, but doesn't have to explain why the content is objectionable. All feelings of any kind must be validated at all times without question or debate, one person said. Imagine needing a safe word in order to play a game with your friends. The infantilization continues, said another. Even Elon Musk, so I didn't know Elon Musk, I'd seen this story, I didn't know Elon Musk had chimed in. Even Elon Musk weighed in saying, nobody, and I mean nobody, gets to trash Gary Gygax and the geniuses who created Dungeons & Dragons. What the F is wrong with Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast? May they burn in hell. Others have embraced the changes, claiming they make the game more inclusive for players. What they're trying to do here is put up a signal flare to not only current players but potential future players that this game is safe, inclusive, thoughtful, and sensitive approach to fantasy storytelling. Ryan Lessard, a writer and frequent Dungeons & Dragons dungeon master, told the New York Times. Wanting all your players to be comfortable and have fun is actually good, or is good actually, one social media user said. So, time moves on. Obviously, there were things in the past which are no longer considered acceptable, and we have a game which was created in the 70s, which was primarily by white men, and I guess in the current climate, some of the things that they came up with would some of the terminology they used would be considered insensitive, and so now we have changes to that. So I don't know how I feel about it overall, but what do you think? I would be interested in knowing your thoughts in the comment section below. Thanks for taking the time to listen to this video, and hopefully I'll be coming back with something soon as well. Thanks.